logged in. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer meditation.
MP. IFP has joined. Unmute.
Thank you, honorable members. Before we proceed, I would like to remind you that this virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precincts of Parliament and constitutes a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, do apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House, and it may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute it when recognized to speak. This is because the mics are very sensitive and will pick up noise that might disturb the attention of other members. I will not hesitate to ask the Sergeant of Arms to disconnect a member from the virtual platform if they consistently interrupt proceedings willingly or unknowingly. When recognized to speak, you must unmute your microphone and connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which is an option that allows a member to raise a point of order. When using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from raising unnecessary points of order or interjections. Lastly, I wish to remind you that we are meeting in a mini-plenary session and therefore decisions will be taken only in a full plenary session of the National Assembly. The first item on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of the Honorable G.G. Hill Lewis on the financial burden of sustaining non-profitable state-owned entities and how the government can reappropriate the continual bailouts used to sustain these entities. Honourable members, I now wish to invite the Honourable G.G. Hill Lewis to the virtual platform. The Honourable Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Frolik. Over the last 12 years, the ANC government has spent 192.5 billion rand bailing out bankrupt state-owned companies. In addition to this, they have committed the government to a further 383.2 billion rand in state guarantees. These guarantees, of course, are bailouts by stealth, because these companies have no ability to repay the loans, and so eventually they will be repaid by the tax-paying public. So they should better be called guaranteed future bailouts. Together, these bailouts and guaranteed future bailouts have brought our country's finances to the point of ruin. We have paid for all of this with mountains of more debt. And what do we have to show for it? Transnet cannot run a railway network, and they sit by and watch as train tracks are being stolen right in front of their eyes. Eskom cannot produce enough electricity. SAA cannot fly. Denel is insolvent, and the Land Bank has defaulted. Every state-owned company is broken and bankrupt. The Minister of Finance started with an astonishing admission last week when he set out how we are now back to the same financial position that the ANC inherited. Excuse me? We are now back at the same financial position that the ANC inherited at the end of apartheid. 3 decades have been obliterated, and we are now right back to where we started. I genuinely feel sorry for ANC members. I'm sure at one point, some joined the ANC wanting to do good, to change South Africa for the better. And now they have to defend the comprehensive disaster that is the ANC's legacy in government. One question which has interested me for some time is the question of why. Why does the ANC persist with that which has so obviously and utterly failed? Why does the ANC persist in the propping up of state-owned companies whose failure is so large that it threatens the very continuity of the state? On the face of it, this is pure insanity. One reason is that the ANC sees itself and the state as the same thing. We are the state and the state is the people, so the logic goes. Linked to this is the ANC's historical core belief that it alone is the source of progress in society and that it has a total monopoly on the truth. What we say is true and good for no other reason because we say it, so the logic goes. So what we see now is the ANC going through the 5 stages of grief. We are already past the first stage, which is denial. Notice how the government does not even try to mount any arguments in favor of SOEs anymore. No one is left who still makes a case for why SAA should be bailed out, because they know it should not be. After denial comes anger. We saw it last week when the Minister of Public Enterprises, in his angry and arrogant manner, tried to lecture the country on why only he could understand what he was doing. South Africans, the media, the DA were just all wrong, ignorant and uneducated, the minister says. I think he will find in time that the public do not take kindly to his insults. But after anger comes bargaining, and we've seen that too. We can see this isn't working, says the ANC, but maybe we can keep control and get a private investor. Except you can't. This isn't really a bailout, we've heard from the Minister of Finance. This time it's different. Except it is a bailout, and it isn't any different. And I think that he too will find the public don't take kindly to their intelligence being insulted. Of course, this is another bailout, and it won't be the last. We all know that. Of course, there is nothing different. It's still the same South African Airways, and there is no private investor. This is just the ANC bargaining with itself. After bargaining, honorable members, comes depression, the common signs of which are withdrawal from society. Perhaps, for example, to a mountain farm in Magubaskloof. Another symptom of depression is disinterest in your work, dining alone on hastily prepared meals, and posting said meals to social media, not just for interest, but more as a cry for help. And finally, after depression comes acceptance. But the ANC isn't there yet. No, definitely not. But it is coming. Try as it might, the truth is inescapable. So if the ANC is demonstrating all of the signs of the 5 stages of grief, the question is, what is it grieving? It is grieving the end of the dream of the developmental state. It is grieving its dream of using the state-owned companies to drive its vision of a state-led economy. And more importantly, and fundamentally, it is grieving the death of its own core beliefs, that the ANC is the only source of progress and that the ANC is always right. Those dreams are dead. It is over. The full panoply of ANC failure is now on national display, and acceptance is all that is left. The only question is how long it will take for the ANC to reach acceptance, and how much more South Africans will have to sacrifice in the process. How many new hospitals will not be built? How many new schools will not be built? How many new teachers and doctors will not be trained? How many crimes will go unsolved? What will be the total human cost of the ANC's grieving process? I predict it will be much higher still, honorable members. Unless we break the cycle with a clear alternative. And that is what the DA will offer. We will break the cycle of state failure and public poverty. State ownership is not the same as public ownership. We will shut down failing state-owned companies and sell those that we can to the public. We will take power away from the hands of a failing state and give choice, competition, ownership, and agency to real people. We must cut the ANC's power cord so that we can give power to the people. That is how we will bring real change and real hope for South Africa's future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Magatka.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to speak without the picture because of my signal challenge.
I understand, Honourable Member. Please continue.
Thank you. Chairperson, my point of departure in this debate is that there is always a financial burden of sustaining state entities, and state-owned entities as government is a service delivery-oriented organization, not a highly profitable business as the previous speaker wished to think. Budgeting is about priorities and balancing that with the resources available. That was in essence what our special appropriation budget for COVID-19 was all about. And the budget itself reflects that. Budgeting has to take cognizance of our realities. And that is why appropriation and reappropriation are all about. And a critical example of that is the President's announcement of the extension of the grants to those in distress due to COVID-19 pandemic. Just imagine if we were under DA government, there would be any of those. It is obvious that the DA wishes to paint a picture about the alternative use of funding, and there are always alternative economic value proposition in queue. But in reality, hard choices are made by those who actually govern. As the ANC, we must be very categorical about the economic reconstruction and recovery plan, as it is based on social delivery of houses, solar water, geysers, improving transport infrastructure, and most of all, to create jobs. That is the historic mission of the ANC, and that will not change as we are a political party born from the historical disadvantage. At the same time, government as a shareholder of state-owned entities is equal as legal. Funding as responsibility to the workers and local economy where state-owned entities operate. It cannot simply walk away from that without serious consequences, unlike the DA would have done. SOEs were generally profitable, and those under focus negatively affected by state capture and corruption. The Sixth Parliament has the unenviable task of eliminating state capture and corruption, and at the same time ensuring the governance, operational, and commercial functioning of state-owned entities is normalized. The economy has been faced with a number of challenges, and the debate is occurring under difficult economic conditions, both locally and globally, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The ANC policy on state-owned entities is clear, as those which operate in important areas of the infrastructure of the economy and make a major contribution to the GDP will be assisted to recover. Not only do they complement the private sector, they are major sources of jobs for our people. This is a critical criterion, and some will seek public and private partnership or strategic equity partners for further infrastructure development. Some, like SAA, make a major direct contribution to GDP and positively contribute to the balance of payments of the country. This occurs through directly enhancing economic activity and connecting our country to global market. These contribute significantly to direct job creation and indirect job creation. Moreover, it contributes indirectly to other major industries, such as tourism industry, which also create jobs and makes a significant contribution to the GDP. The South African aviation market, if it is to remain attractive to domestic and foreign travelers, must be competitive, and SA positively contributes that competition. Our country is far away geographically from major markets, and it is imperative that all modes of transport are efficiently functional for the movement of freight and people. The SOEs operating in the transport logistics sector are key to economic reconstruction and recovery plan, and this must be supported in as much as we support the building of houses and provision of basic services. The current support for SOEs is not bailout. I think the DA must understand this. But the recapitalization which is normal in many countries, government is attaching conditions on criteria for any support which is granted. Reappropriation and recapitalization can occur in a number of different ways and does not always have a negative economic impact, as it depends on the total economic value and contribution to the country in terms of GDP. The balance payment and job creation, SAA case is recapitalization, as there is less economic value in liquidation, and liquidation has a far greater cost. And the DA must understand this. As an ANC, we have a responsibility to our people. We can't leave them there because of liquidation. The case of SAA is not a bailout, but the companies are not based on further borrowing, placing a further burden on our fiscals. It is a temporary measure to stabilize and ensure operational and commercial efficiency. The DA equates a temporary measure with a permanent feature, which is not the case. The Minister of Finance has attached conditions to funding given to ESCOM, and same will apply to the structured SAA. Let who has not sinned cast the first stone. Those who stay in glass houses should not be throwing stone. It is important that in the period of economic reconstruction and recovery, those opportunities which develop our economy are not missed through theoretical exercises which are not based on reality. The reality of the situation is that we have a number of workers that are sitting there not knowing their future, whom they expect to go home without nothing, and we don't know when they are going to get employment. Therefore, if our government can ignore those realities, then we won't be an ANC government. We'll be perhaps a DA government who can abandon, who doesn't care about employment, who only care about accumulation of profit. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Lees.
Mr. Chair, on the 26th of November 2019, I made a speech in this House calling for the bankrupt SAA to be put into business rescue. 8 days later, on the 5th of December 2019, the ANC finally had no other option and SAA was put into business rescue. By the end of November 2019, SAA had for the umpteenth time run out of cash and bailouts. In order for SAA to borrow more money from Nedbank, Investec, FirstRand, ABSA, and Standard Bank, these banks apparently showed a bit of backbone and made their 2 billion rand loan conditional on SAA being put into business rescue. These banks apparently even selected Les Madison as the business rescue practitioner to be appointed. Well, the banks underestimated the capacity of the ANC to manipulate the SAA business rescue. By the 18th of December 2019, Siviwe Dongwana had been appointed as a second business rescue practitioner, and he has effectively been in charge of SAA ever since. The appointment of Siviwe Dongwana was clearly calculated to prevent the logical liquidation. Dongwana is without doubt a faithful ANC cadre, given his performance when he was Director General of Public Works during the 260 million rand illegal state-funded upgrades to Jacob Zuba's Nkandla compound. Even with the 2 billion rand commercial bank loans, SAA needed more cash. SAA was undisputedly beyond rescue, but instead of following the Companies Act requirement to apply for SAA to be liquidated, the SAA business rescue practitioners asked for yet another bailout. This bailout came as an overnight loan of 3.5 billion rand from the DBSA. The DBSA has refused my prior application for details of the due diligence done. There was clearly none done. The whole 5.5 billion rand in bailouts was used up in 2 months, and SAA was once again out of cash. For SAA, the COVID-19 pandemic was a godsend that allowed the airline to quietly park off and return 40 aircraft to their owners, and has only 8 vintage aircraft left. Don't let the ANC kid you that this 10.5 billion rand is not a bailout. It is yet another bailout for the ANC dead duck SAA vanity project. Don't let the ANC kid you that they care for the poor. They want to give SAA 10.5 billion rand taken from budgets for basic services like Eskom and police. Don't let the ANC kid you that SAA will rise from the ashes and miraculously become profitable. The twist is that SAA will ask for more. Don't let the SAA kid you that SAA is an economic enabler. SAA has not serviced small and domestic and regional destinations in the past and will not do so in the future. Don't let the ANC kid you that there is some private equity investor. For the last 5 years, we have heard this story, and there's still no such investor yet revealed. Don't let the ANC kid you that they care for the employees of SAA. If this were so, then they would make the same huge taxpayer-funded severance packages available to SA Express employees and to private sector employees who have been retrenched. Even if Parliament approves the 10.5 billion rand SAA bailout proposed by Honourable Mboweni, SAA will not see the cash until January 2021. The commercial banks have already capitulated and have apparently made 3.6 billion rand in bridging finance available to SAA. There is still time to block this mad 10.5 billion rand allocation to SAA. All of us in this house have a duty to the poor people of South Africa. We must refuse to pass the proposed 10.5 billion rand SAA bailout. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Tambo.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, allow us to first expose the racist right-wing ideology that seeks to protect the interests of a few who are working tirelessly to accumulate through the dispossession of public assets. We must address the Honourable Hill Lewis's malnourished motion in all of its manifestations. Firstly, by educating him on the purpose of state-owned entities as not vehicles for profit, but institutions upon which economic sovereignty ought to be established. A state-owned enterprise ought to be understood as a vehicle for building state capacity and maintaining a nation's capacity to determine its own affairs. It is for this reason we must reject the DA's right-wing attempt at defunding SOEs in a quest to return our country to a state of childhood to colonial nations. The simple and honest truth is that the ruling party inherited political power in 1994 when we transitioned from the colonial apartheid dispensation and did not have either the will or the technical capacity to give concrete developmental mandates to state-owned companies. They did not know what to do with South African Airways. They did not know what to do with railway infrastructure and Transnet's capabilities. They did not know how to use Eskom capacity to electrify previously excluded communities and build additional power stations and generation mix. They did not know what to do with Denel, Safcol, SABC, Alexco, SA Express, Broadband, Infranco, Land Bank, Post Office, the SA Nuclear Energy Corporation, Telkom, and many other companies. Instead, the political power was used to privatize public assets that rightfully belong to people as a whole to benefit the few. This was done with the wish that the still colonial, foreign-owned, and unpatriotic private sector will voluntarily participate positively in the developmental agenda of South Africa to create jobs, reduce poverty and inequality. There is no evidence anywhere in the world to suggest that you can hand over public assets to the control and ownership of the few, and this will lead to the development of the community as a whole. It has never happened anywhere, and South Africa is just one case of many cases. The only thing capital and foreign capital in particular is loyal to is profits. Just because the ruling party lacked the necessary political will, a situation which was made worse by rampant looting, does not mean we should be deceived into supporting some misguided right-wing privatization agenda led by the finance minister and chaired by the racists of the DA. Well-managed and positioned state-owned companies will contribute to the fiscus and not depend on our taxes. A case in point is Telkom. It owns and controls BCX and Gyro. In 2020, the number of active customers went up 23.9% to 12 million. Service revenue went up by 54.4% to 12.6 billion. Mobile data went up by 69%, and the company realized a profit. Telkom is not the only state-owned company that has demonstrated that if managed, state-owned companies are an important arm of the state. Government remains the main shareholder of Airports Company South Africa with 74.6% shares, and the PIC with 20% shares. Airports Company owns and manages 9 airports, namely OR Tambo International Airport, Cape Town International Airport, King Shaka, Port Elizabeth, Bram Fisher, Uppington, East London, George, and Kimberley Airports. And these have world-class infrastructure and still record a profit of 227 million. Telkom and Airports Company South Africa are exceptions. Our position is that this should be a norm than an exception. SOE's compliance with the state's developmental targets should not be voluntary, but mandatory. Instead of just pouring endless bailouts, what we need are concrete steps forward, which the state should initiate and give strategic and financial support to, including establishing a state housing construction company, a state roads construction company, a state cement company, a state pharmaceutical company, a state-owned mining company, and a state food stocking company. The state must support these state-owned companies with critical parts of the value chains in which these companies operate so that they play an essential input into the economy on a non-profit maximization basis. Furthermore, to propose the reappropriating of funds which are set aside to revive and sustain SOEs towards other sectors in society reveals how the Democratic Alliance has no workable economic plan for South Africa. An economy cannot be built on shifting around of money at the expense of national assets, as much as it cannot be built on a foolish belief in the goodwill of capitalist investors. The only way to create sustainable jobs, fund free education and healthcare, and build houses is through placing SOEs at the center of economic development. State-owned companies should not be driven by principles of profit maximization, but they need to provide cheap and affordable services to the people and the economy at large through cost recovery models. For this reason, we must jealously defend our SOEs from people who have no economic imagination and want to sacrifice our sovereignty to the highest bidder to further a right-wing agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Numalo.
Thank you very much, Chair. Please allow me not to also open my video because of connectivity, Chair.
That's fine.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just to note, I delivered this debate on behalf of Inkosi E.M. Buthelezi. Chair, we are currently in the middle of a protracted proceedings before the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture, which is investigating corruption, fraud, and state capture at the SOEs. These entities have long been at the center of corruption and everything. For many bailouts have become the only source of income and guarantee that their doors will be opened because of this bailout. We know the damage that has been done at the various SOEs, and daily we hear of the revelations of an even more insidious corruption that we could never have imagined via the Zondo Commission, as I've said. This, in fact, colleagues and honorable members, is the financial burden of supporting particularly the non-profitable SOEs is unsustainable, and if we cannot find a means by which to recoup these immense losses. By the beginning of September, Honorable Chair, the South African Post Office had requested 4.9 billion from the National Treasury. The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC, was looking for 1.5 billion rands. The Airports Company of South Africa also requested 3.5 billion rands injection due to the impact of the pandemic. Denel is close to liquidation, and they've also asked the Department of Defense to provide 683 million rands in funding for 2021, whereas Denel has made 1.8 billion losses in the 2019-2020 financial year. Again, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, in this medium-term budget policy statement, the Finance Minister allocated 26 billion rands in further financial support to Eskom. The power utility just announced that it has made a net loss of 20.5 billion rands in 2020. At this rate, honorable members, ESCOM will need about R1 billion a week from government to stay afloat. For Denel, National Treasury has released 305 million rands of the 576 million rands cash injection allocated to the company, and this has been used to service the debt. Denel has asked for the remaining 271 million rands be used for the working capital. Now, again, Honorable Chair and honorable members and South Africans, the controversial 10.5 billion rand that has been set aside or allocated to SAA and the 3.2 billion rands of the SABC paint a very expensive picture of our national treasury. All these expenses result in other equally crucial government departments losing financial support from government, critical for their functions. We are looking at extreme unemployment in our country, and the Department of Labor cannot, honorable members, guarantee support for South Africans because funds are being diverted to these themselves when food is being taken away from their tables by the very same government that is constitutionally obligated to cater for them. The financial cost of supporting SOEs is the line between the livelihood of their own employees and the service delivery of basic constitutionally guaranteed services. We need to start seeing heads rolling for misconduct and criminal offenses. Officials and other individuals must start paying personally from their illegal lined pockets for the dire state of our SOEs. The culture of protecting those who break the law with impunity must be dismantled. Otherwise, Honorable Chair, as I conclude, we'll dig ourselves a greater debt as far as this of 3 trillion rands we are already finding ourselves in.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Wessels.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. House Chair, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. The state's endeavor to control and regulate from sport to culture to the economy is at the center of the crisis faced by the country currently. Does SOEs contribute to economic growth currently at all? And that's the point that the ANC and the EFF misses. We are in a crisis, House Chair. We are faced by a fiscal cliff, and we are on the edge of that cliff. And does the appropriation of funds and bailouts and whatever we want to call it, and whatever definition we want to give it, money of taxpayers that we give to failed and unsustainable SOEs, does that at all prevent us from reaching the edge of that fiscal cliff? And the answer is simple. It does not. It actually contributes, obviously, to us nearing the fiscal cliff. House Chair, whilst people are tormented in South Africa by poor service delivery, by sewage running through their houses, by no electricity, by no water, we appropriate, and this government appropriates money to a failed and bankrupt South African Airways to benefit just a few. The ANC's point about employment does not make sense. Does it make sense to save a few thousand jobs and sacrifice millions in return? It does not. And then I also want to say, Chairperson, that if one listens to the Zondo Commission and the testimony in front of the Zondo Commission, I want to tell Dudu Mnyeni that it's not a surname or a race that makes her untrustworthy. It's a fact that under her watch, the SAA was completely destroyed. She allowed SAA to be destroyed. She stole and she allowed money to be mismanaged, that the SOE was completely and utterly destroyed. We need responsible governance. We need appropriation towards infrastructure, education, peace and security, not to failed SOEs. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP welcomes the subject for discussion raised by the Honourable Hill Lewis. And it is very clear from the medium-term budget policy statement that the country's public finances, the high levels of expenditure, lower levels of revenue, spiraling debt are unsustainable and place the country on a path to a sovereign debt crisis. It is also obvious that the financial burden of non-profitable state-owned entities, decimated by years of mismanagement, state capture and looting, is similarly unsustainable and presents a major short to medium-term risk to the fiscal framework. This is highlighted by National Treasury itself, which points out that the contingent liability risks stem from poor financial condition of SOEs. And by 22-23, contingent liabilities are expected to exceed 1 trillion rand, with the largest facility being granted to Eskom, 350 billion. National Treasury expects the collective debt of the 10 largest borrowers to exceed 810 billion, a staggering figure. And it is also becoming increasingly difficult for SOEs to access capital market funding. Now, the extent of the financial crisis at SOEs is apparent when one studies the medium-term budget policy statement. And it is very interesting to see where the budget lines are going to be cut, apparently to find the 10.5 billion needed to fund the SAA business rescue and other much needed items. Besides the cuts to the budget, police budget, there are cuts to community library services grant, the National Facility Revitalization Grant, the HIV, TB, malaria and community outreach grant, the National Health Insurance Grant, School Infrastructure Backlogs Grant, and the Provincial Emergency Housing Grant. These are among other cuts. Now, communities will apparently bear the brunt of these decisions, and this, in our view, is disgraceful. The country cannot afford to cut anything from such budget items, particularly the HIV, TB, malaria outreach during this COVID-19 period, let alone that 222.4 billion. This when more than 200,000 people have died of these curable diseases during the lockdown period. Government should definitely reprioritize the continual bailouts that are being given to dysfunctional SOEs and ensure that the funds are given to deserving communities and not wasted. Chair, we also saw the wastage, and the Minister Pravin Gordhan was part of the Eskom oversight inquiry. We see the wastage taking place at the Zonda Commission, and indeed, the ACDP agrees that funds can and should be prioritized from dysfunctional SOEs to fund urgent social and economic needs in the country. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. The biggest challenge that government faces is the opportunistic cost of SOE bailouts and the fiscal effect that trickles down to service delivery. The most sensible reason for these continued bailouts is the preservation of jobs. However, at what cost? Is the opportunity cost of preserving the dismally failing SOEs higher than the jobs that are being saved? The accumulated annual cost, Honourable House Chair, of South Africa's dysfunctional SOEs in terms of job losses, deterring investment and reducing economic growth are now a threat to the country's economic sustainability. Without drastic reforms, SOE's debt has forced the country to seek bailout from the World Bank and the IMF. Even worse, recently, it forced Treasury to redirect funds meant for service delivery. The 10.5 billion bailout for South African Airways alone is affecting the real people. In the 2018-19 fiscal year, SOEs had a combined debt close to 2 trillion rand. The facts are debt to GDP increased by 10 percentage points from 2014 to 2018. Government debt was equivalent to 62.2% of the country's GDP in 2019. It has been estimated that the debt to GDP burden will reach 91% of the GDP by 2023. Government social measures have moved debt to GDP value from 62 to about 70%. Every political decision should be weighed against its economic consequences. Every political policy ought to be refracted through an economic prism. The finance minister told the country that every single day South Africa borrows an equivalent of 2.1 billion rand just to pay its bill. Now the question with South African Airways, and yes, it is the pride and joy of South Africa, and it should be protected to some extent. However, how much longer, in the absence of a plan, a workable plan, are we going to be bailing out these state-owned entities? But very importantly, to date, despite over 20 times requesting what consequences where there will be for Coleman Andrews, who sold the entire fleet of South African Airways, Honorable House Chair, to date, no one, not even the Department of Public Enterprises, are willing to comment on this, let alone do anything about it. So the National Freedom Party believes that the decisions we take must be in line with ensuring that we protect the interest of our people and the fiscus as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Kwankwa, I see you are on the platform. Did you wish to participate in this mini plenary? Honorable Kwankwa? If not, we'll proceed to the next speaker. It will be the Honorable Chabalala.
Kwangwa is sleeping on duty, Chair.
Honorable Member, your comments are unwarranted. The Honorable Chabalala, the ANC.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I hope that you covered just my seconds there. Let's welcome perhaps the enthusiasm that the opposition is debating this debate. But basically for myself, because then a DA debate of John Vulligate, I really don't really have much to really say to them, because there isn't much that the opposition has said. Perhaps it gave me opportunity to speak about what the ANC promises it was to do. Let me just cover Honorable Sheikh there that speaks about treasury, that we're diverting funds. No.
I'm sorry, House Chairperson, just a point of order.
Mackenzie, you mute your mic, please.
Honorable Chabalala, there's a point of order from the Honorable Mackenzie. What is the point of order, Honorable Member?
Thank you, House Chairperson. The Honourable Member referred to a member of this House as John Vulligate. I'm not sure who she's referring to, if she can address members of this Parliament correctly. Thank you, Chair.
And I don't want other members to chip in. I'll remove you immediately from the platform without any warning. Chabalala, did you refer to a member of the House?
I didn't mention a name. I said John Vulligate. Is the member that's called John Vulligate?
Are you referring to a member of the House or not?
No, I said John Vulligate.
Are you not referring to a member of the House?
No, there's no member. I mentioned their name.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Chairperson, Honorable Sheikh speaks about the funds that Treasury would have taken and allocated to SOEs. He would keen to know that at the helm of the budget, or rather of our own fiscus, what we spend money on, it's on social development, it's on education at the helm, it's health at the helm, economic matters that are right at the bottom in how we allocate the funds. So it's not true that perhaps these allocations, they take precedence over the issue of social security. ACDP, the issue of budget cuts and the grants that have been allocated, and I like what you do because you speak about TB, malaria, all those grants that are done by this government and the government of the ANC over time. So it cannot be that the same government of the ANC doesn't see it prudent to make sure that it's safe. So whatever that the ANC government would have appropriated and deemed suit that it needs to deal with other budgets, then it means they've been informed by research. So it cannot be that you make a statement that people died during lockdown because of malaria and TB. As a member of parliament and responsible, so you need to prove that and say, where did that happen? What is it that you do? Did you escalate it and so forth and so on? But I'll just implore you that for you to share the information with the relevant health department for you to do that, so that we just don't put things there and at the end of the day we perpetuate to society that we're irresponsible, we want people, we're taking money away from them for, we don't cover malaria, almost as if we don't care. It's us who came with a policy in terms of HIV/AIDS. What is it that we have done till today? Is this government that has been able to manage those type of crises? I'll come to the DA later. The IFP speaks about controversy, head ruling, the issue of the corruption. We're at the helm of it. NPA, You've seen hawks are all over the place, arrests are taking place, civil litigation is taking place, criminal cases are taking place. So I don't think there's an issue. Zondo Commission is highly supported, is doing its work where we are seated. FF Plus, it says that we're regulating everything, sports and culture. Constitution of this country enjoins us to do so. As a responsible government, as a member of parliament, you will understand the importance of regulating your people's movement and what needs to happen. And of course, we don't do that irresponsible by over-regulating, but it's through consultation as a member of parliament. Now, let me come to my what I want to leave this meeting with and say that I want to really begin by wishing the best to the class of 2020, the matriculants that are writing, and congratulates the Minister of Basic Education by saving the academic year amongst these challenges that we had of COVID-19, the educators, the learners, the students, the parents, and we really want to say we wish them very well. Now, the debate we're having is on the alleged financial burden of sustaining non-profitable state-owned entities, how the government can reappropriate the continual bailouts used to sustain these entities. I'm using the word alleged because the honorable member and his party have a biased view when it comes to the public sector entities. And I'll tell you why. The DA has never raised a whimper regarding the bailout of Edcon, the parent company of Edgas, Jet and CNA shops. Edcon received 1.2 billion investment from the PIC last year, and which is from pensions of the public service workers. The motivation of this investment was to save 140,000 private sector jobs. The DA has never objected to the automotive investment scheme of the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. The incentive is designed to grow and develop the private automotive sector through investment in components that increase plant production volumes, sustain employment, and strengthen the automotive value chain. Just this year, government appropriated over 65 billion to support companies in distress to stay afloat through various schemes by departments such as tourism, small businesses development, the TER scheme of the Department of Employment and Labor. The DA has been at pains demanding the extension of the TER scheme, which has already dispersed over 51 billion to over 1 million companies in 11.5 million payments. The point I'm trying to make here, Honorable House Chair, is that this matter of the recapitalization and support from the fiscal to the state-owned enterprises is an emotive matter to South African taxpayers. It makes people angry because it's often put as a choice between saving the state, company, and funding social programs, education, and health, which is not the truth. The false dilemma is used by the DA, and we heard it today, and other political parties. Their criticism of government decision is unprincipled and inconsistent. We understand the concern the organized working class represented by the public service trade unions based on the perception that 10.5 allocated to SAA is taken from the funds originally earmarked for salaries. We commend government that they will continue to engage ongoing and amicable solution to the matter should be found. There's also perception that the funds allocated will go into a dark hole of corruption. The label of corruption in SOEs is thrown around to scare people from taking the only logical option that we have. The people can see that the Hawks have made many arrests and MPA has been charging people in the courts. Many criminal and civil cases are being pursued against individuals and companies where alleged to be involved in the state of capture and corruption at ESCOM and other SOEs. Assets are being seized and monies are being recovered. The current and former board members of the sector, like I said, Zondo Commission and so forth, is so in the logic applied by some parties of this house is simple. For these private sector friends, state bailouts and subsidies are welcome and no one is held accountable. But for the public sector, the only option is to sell off the national treasure to the predominantly white-owned companies in order to entrench the apartheid social order. The recapitalization of the SOE is not an abnormal economic. As I close, the honorable dear members must make
your time is expired.
Matters on state home. I thank you.
Honorable Kwankwa, I now recognize you. I understand you will debate in this mini plenary. The Honorable Kwankwa. Seems to me the Honorable Member is not on the platform. I will then proceed to the Honorable Kachalia. Honorable Kachalia, you may proceed.
Thank you. Let me take you back to last year when President Ramaphosa published his open letter on SOEs. He said that despite severe... Can I start again, please? Can I start again, please?
Honorable members, there are members who have their microphones on and they are disturbing the proceedings. May I request the Sergeant at Arms to identify those members for me so that we can remove them from the virtual platform. You may start again, Honorable Kachalia.
Thank you. Let me take you back to last year when President Ramaphosa published his open letter on SOEs. He said that despite severe financial difficulties, operational problems, and crippling debt, he would not allow any of these entities to fail. Minister Gordon echoed this and said SOEs require special measures, which include greater intervention from the shareholder. Well, a year of intervention later, the SOEs, almost without exception, are in a worse state than before. Despite continued bailouts and at our collective expense, financial difficulties, operational problems, and ongoing graft that still bedevil these companies as they struggle to deliver adequate public goods. Honorable Magaka says that they are generally profitable. What is he smoking? Take Transnet, where our ports are more expensive, double the average cost of port in high-income countries, and where the cost of rail transport is almost 3 times that of road transport.
Order, Honorable Chairperson. House Chair. Point of
Honorable
order.
Kachalia, let me just take this point of order. Why do you want to be recognized, Honorable Member?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The member who's speaking just make reference to Comrade Kaya Magakla as a member of this house and say he doesn't know what is this smoking. Now he can't say that. He must withdraw that.
Honorable Kachalia, did you say that?
It is a turn of phrase. It is a metaphor. Generally accepted that to say that the person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Honorable Member, did you say that? So you admit you said it. You must withdraw it, please.
I withdraw it.
Thank you.
I wonder what he was thinking.
Thank you. May proceed.
In terms of transport and Transnet, this is supposed to be the spine of our economy. Some spine, some economy. Electricity is neither affordable nor available. In direct contradiction of Eskom's mandate, it cannot continue as a going concern. Massive bailouts notwithstanding, without consumer crippling tariff increases. Eskom should be the lifeblood running through the veins of our economy. Pity, though, that the arteries are fatally blocked. It posted a staggering 20.5 billion loss for the year to March and remains the biggest risk to the nation's economy. SAA is bust and SA Express is buried, but the minister is hell-bent on trying to save a dead duck in the hope that it will fly. Shamefully, in a time of COVID, at the expense of health, policing, and education, with more injections from the public purse down the line. Denel, once a world leader in its field, is unable to deliver on key projects or even pay salaries as it records a loss of 1.75 billion. Even SAFCO reported a loss of 47 million, with irregular expenditure hovering around the 350 million mark, indicative of yet another SOE continuing to fail in corporate governance. Alex Core, a diamond mining operation, though why the state should own a diamond miner is beyond my ken, reported a loss with zero revenue generating activities. Its 2019 losses amounted to 173.6 million. It's beset by corruption, mismanagement, and the wholesale dereliction of the Northern Cape community it is supposed to serve. It's a disgrace. These are your SOEs under Minister Gordon's aegis. As the founding father of modern Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew once said, to get good government, you must have good people in charge of government. And the plain fact of the matter is that this government and its predecessors governs through a tripartite alliance with the South African Communist Party, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, and they seek to influence government policy and decisions for their own ends. They have mismanaged, stolen, deployed useless cadres, and driven these SOEs into the ground with devastating effects on the fiscus, our debt levels, and our ability to borrow and service the debt. We now borrow at 2.1 billion per day because as long as the system gave unto Caesar his due, the crimes and mismanagement were tolerated. Worse, they were encouraged. And now we're being spun a tale, yet again, that speaks of fixing, cleaning, and delivering. Pull the other one. Give the good people of our country one plausible reason why you should be trusted. I put it to you, we do not have good people in charge of government. Failure upon failure attests to this, and it should be clear to Minister Gordhan, the chemist that he is, that no Panado is going to cure this cancer. What is needed, as the DA has championed, is transparency and accountability across the board now. The truncation of the state's dead hand in the running of these businesses, the privatization of entities and business units and companies by bringing strategic private sector partners on board. And make no mistake, they will have terms governing their investment. And it won't be on the basis of your tripart alliance's whims that proverbially binds with briars our joys and desires. I hope that the Honorable Shabalala is listening. She might learn a thing or two. The flexibility of the labor market will need to be addressed, and your procurement regulations, like those concerning pre-qualification criteria, the biggest facilitator of corruption under the guise of BEE, which the Supreme Court has just ruled against, will have to go. Actually, this government will in all probability have to go, because you are structurally incapable of dismantling the web of toxic vested interests that conflate state, party, and alliances. If you had a semblance of responsibility, you'd call a snap election now, but you won't, because the passengers on that side of the house are still aboard the gravy train. Make no mistake, those rails are coming off. I might add, without the help of the Looney Tunes caricatures in red overalls. I thank you.
I now recognize the Honorable Minister of Public Enterprises, the Honorable Gordhan. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon to you and to the honorable members. Let me thank Honorable Hill Lewis for giving us what was, at first sight, an interesting topic for discussion. But after he finished, I was wondering what the issue really was, because he neither comes up with an analysis, nor does he come up with any solutions, nor does he propose any recommendations, as his topic seems to suggest in terms of reappropriation of funds in various directions. But that's perfectly understandable, because he and his two comrades, the Honorable Lees and the Honorable Kachalia, are present in this debate purely to advance an ideological standpoint. An ideological standpoint masked in some ways with a bit of bluster and hyperbole, but essentially saying that all entities that belong to the state should be privatized, that the private sector should be allowed to cherry pick these assets and make profits out of them, and that the public, particularly the poor and the working class in South Africa and the middle class as well, can suffer the consequences of that. We advance this from an ANC and government point of view in respect of the SOCs in the context of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. Within the context of that plan, there is a clear agenda set out or intent set out for the reform of state-owned companies. And I'll spell out in a moment what has been done up to now and what is still to be done. The DA, on the other hand, is interested in playing politics and advancing an ideology which we fundamentally disagree with. And I'm sure that Mr. Kachalia is saying the same to us as well. So I think we should tell the South African public very frankly that we come from very different backgrounds in terms of our worldviews and philosophies, and not mask it, as I said earlier on, with all sorts of metaphors, allegedly, and the kind of bluster that accompanies the presentations. Because it is misleading to tell the public that the DA is actually acting in the interest of South Africans when it critiques the SOCs, when it actually provides no insight to the South African public on the kind of damage that state capture has done to the state-owned entities. It looks like all three of our colleagues have a collective amnesia in this particular regard and are in fact possibly scared to even take on this monster called state capture, because taking on state capture means taking on people and individuals who had a critical role in depriving South Africans of potentially hundreds of billions of rands, and to do the hard work that is required in order to place SOEs on a different kind of footing compared to the easy narratives that are put across in the debates in front of us. The DA, as they have correctly reflected in their language and in the content, is no more than an old-style neoliberal organization with a majority of market fundamentalists. They must confess to have purged social democrats in their ranks and being intolerant of differences of opinion in their own ranks, let alone their differences with ourselves. Honorable Lees is really disingenuous. He spent 3 hours almost yesterday with the business rescue practitioners and the Department of Public Enterprises in the context of a presentation on SAA to SCOPA and to the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises. And after 3 hours, he once again presents a narrative to South Africans that is misleading and lacks the frankness and the correctness that is required in order to project what really is going on within SAA, why the 10.5 billion rands, and that we're not all crazy in terms of the intent that we have. But it's perfectly understandable when he wants to continuously repeat the word bailout, because the public has become used to the idea that bailouts mean, in essence, that you are putting money into entities that will continue to work as they have in the past, and we must concede that. 10 years or so, or perhaps even a little bit more, with the assistance of the state providing money endlessly for wrong purposes. And that is something that the administration of President Ramaphosa is actually attempting to put right. But of course, politics is not necessarily about being frank with the South African public, notwithstanding the transparency the Honorable Kachalia seems to ask for. What they represent, Mr. Chairperson, and members of Parliament and the South African public, is essentially a Thatcherite view of life, which is long dead and long gone. But it is a philosophy that South African neoliberals still feel comfortable associating themselves with. So let's unmask ourselves and honestly tell South Africans where we actually come from. We can certainly critique Transnet, Eskom, SAA, PRASA, all of these institutions for the current state of affairs that we find themselves in, or find them in. And the critique will be accurate, the numbers will be accurate, but that's not the issue. Everybody understands what the problem is. The question is, what is the solution? And the question is, what are you willing to contribute to the solution? At the moment, all you are willing to contribute to not the solution, but to the debate is a critique made on the basis of a total misunderstanding of the facts. And that is why I have made reference in the statement issued from the ministry of a particularly regrettable and disappointing subject illiteracy amongst the DA colleagues. But I should have known better. I known that this is not about subject illiteracy. It's about political positioning that conveniently suits Mr. Hill Lewis and his associates, so that they can do as much as possible to discredit the ANC in this particular regard. So what is our intent as we go forward on the question of SOEs? Clearly, our intent is, as the President has spelled out on many occasions, that we want new boards with credibility, with appropriately experienced and ethical directors, firstly. Secondly, our intent is that, as the President has said over 3 sonars, that where SOEs are not able to raise sufficient financing from banks, from capital markets, from development finance institutions or the fiscus, we will need to explore other mechanisms such as strategic equity partnerships or selling off non-strategic assets. Of course, our colleagues will conveniently forget all of those pronouncements made by the president. In another SONA address to all of us, the president said that to ensure that the state can effectively enable economic and social development, it is essential that we strengthen our state-owned enterprises. Through the Presidential SOE Council, the government intends to create alignment between all state-owned companies and to define their respective mandates better. It might interest all of us to know that at the moment, SOCs contribute about 5% to GDP and have a multiplier effect of about 15% on GDP as well. But if we want to honestly talk about SOEs and their particular kind of role, let's not isolate South Africa from the global trends. The global trend at the moment is that the GDP contribution of SOEs has grown to the point where 50% of the trillions of dollars that constitute the global GDP are in fact contributed by SOEs. And these are obviously, in some instances, massive giants, such as China Grid and other companies like ENI and others that originate from the European continent. So let's look at the global comparisons, and you will find that the new initiatives that we are taking, both to stabilize SOEs and to move forward in a very different direction for the critical SOEs, is comparable to the kind of work that is happening on a global scale. And of course, it will take us a few years to actually get to that particular point. Now, as I begin to reach the conclusion of what I want to say, let me once again repeat that the DA has made a pitiful contribution to the debate today. It was a pretentious title that turned out to be absolutely vacuous, apart from the projection of a Thatcherite view of life and a market fundamentalism that has actually failed throughout the world. A billionaire US business person, Ray Dalio, that some of you might be familiar with, has an interesting critique of this kind of worldview. And I quote, "The problem is that capitalists typically don't know how to divide the pie well, and socialists typically don't know how to grow it well. One might hope that when such economic polarity and poor conditions exist, leaders will pull together to reform the system to both divide the pie and make it grow better, which is certainly doable and the best path." And it goes on further to say they typically become progressively more extreme and fight more than cooperate. And that's the problem with the DA. It wants to engage in showmanship or showpersonship rather than actually create grounds for cooperation. So where exactly is the ANC and this government going? Firstly, we acknowledge that SOCs have a vital role to play both in our economy and in our society. Secondly, we acknowledge the kind of global trends that have developed in terms of the contribution that SOCs can make potentially to GDP, both to our own country and to the continents as well. We have also taken note of the global trends in terms of better governance and better operational and financial management within these SOEs. Thirdly, we have a very clear plan, which is a transformative plan, where SOCs should be agencies for the transformation of the South African economy. None of the DA speakers have mentioned this. We cannot leave an economy that is still divided on the basis of race and gender and geography. And the DA has absolutely no plan whatsoever to make sure that all South Africans are beneficiaries of any policy that we actually come up with. Let me repeat, the basis of some of the actions that we are taking is the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. We have done our own diagnosis and analysis. We understand the fiscal realities that many of the speakers have referred to, and our intent is to make sure that within the next few years, reliance by SOEs on the fiscus is absolutely done away with. There is indeed a burning platform, which we acknowledge, and part of that burning platform is to urgently intervene in certain instances of SOEs, But in other instances, the DA should actually be frank with us, Chairperson, and acknowledge that Eskom has a roadmap that is being implemented, which is transformative. And in a few years' time, you will see massive changes in this particular regard. They mislead the South African public on SAA. There is no bailout. This is part of the process of Mr. Hill Lewis is interfering, Chairperson.
I said, will you take a question, Minister?
No.
Please proceed.
Can't answer it.
Please proceed.
Chairperson, we can do without this useless chopping. The SAA, this is not a bailout. It is to pay retrenchment costs. It is to pay voluntary severance packages. It is to tell thousands of the customers of SAA, if you've paid for a ticket and you haven't flown yet, the state has the responsibility to pay it back. And I don't have time to go into those details. The DA is now telling those customers, go to hell. You can lose your money and that's the end of the story. Why doesn't the DA tell them that, frankly? And I'm sure they'll win a lot more members as a result of that. So we are going to restructure SAA. There will be a new airline that emerges, which will not be dependent on the fiscus, and that will indeed follow the telecom model that we have all made reference to. SOEs in general, as I conclude, Chairperson, will be repurposed and redirected and reorganized in order to be an exemplary set of institutions. But this will take time. It will take hard work. We will have to undo the damage of state capture that all of us seem to be in denial about, particularly in the DA. And we will ensure that the right governance, operations, financial stability, and business models are being put in place. And finally, there will be creative bases upon which there will be participation of the private sector, and watch the space over the next few weeks and months as we make announcements in this particular regard. So the DA, Chairperson, in conclusion, has nothing to offer this country apart from bluster and misleading statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that concludes the debate on this subject. We shall now proceed to the first order of the day, which is the consideration of a report of the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs on the petition relating to allegations of corruption and mismanagement at Knysna local municipality in the Western Cape. I now recognize the Honourable Hadebe on the virtual platform.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Please allow me not to switch on my mic due to network connectivity. The ANC...
You may keep on your mic, you may keep off your video.
Thank you, Chair. The ANC is building a capable developmental state that has improved the lives of millions of South African people. This has placed South Africa amongst the few countries in the world that have succeeded in expanding vital services such as water, sanitation, electricity, roads, and housing to so many people in such a short time. Yet far too many municipalities are still dysfunctional. They lack the financial, technical, or administrative capacity to meet the needs of the residents. Honourable House Chair, the above stated challenges require the strengthening of integrated planning, coordination, and implementation across all three spheres of government. In the face of these challenges, the ANC appeals to all those deployed in public institutions to put partisan aside and discharge their duties with distinction. Having said that, Chair, the ANC acknowledges that many political leaders and civil servants are hardworking, committed, competent, and capable public servants. Honourable Chairperson, in pursuit of strengthening good governance in our public institutions, the law enforcement agencies recently have been working hard around the clock, bringing to book all those implicated in wrongdoing and misappropriation of public purse. Indeed, 2020 is a year of orange overall. Concurrently, the African National Congress appreciates the strides that our government is making in boosting public employment programs to better respond to the challenges faced by our society. Honourable Chair, in building responsive and capable local government, ANC calls on for Knysna local municipality to work towards improving the way it interacts with communities, and it should not be seen as dividing the communities according to a racial background, as enshrined in the preamble of our constitution, that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. The municipality should also take a lead in conducting regular forums or imbizos and make effective use of new communication technologies to address problems and empower communities to organize themselves. Honorable House Chair, the national government, as led by the African National Congress, continues to support municipalities to transform the spatial injustices of the apartheid, which relegated most South Africans to the margins of the cities, towns, and farming areas, leaving them without rights, without land, without assets, and without opportunities. As the African National Congress, we therefore appeal to the National Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs to consider a NISNA intervention option in terms of Section 154 of the Constitution in lieu of Section 139, which has not yet yielded positive results in some areas. In the same vein, the African National Congress supports all the recommendations to the Portfolio Committee of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, particularly that the municipality must return in the next quarter to brief the committee on the progress made in restoring good governance, ethos, and ethics, including financial stability in the municipalities. Honorable House Chair, the gigantic and unparalleled African National Congress moves that the House adopt this recommendation. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Opperman.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. A local problem often needs a local solution rather than impositions of solutions from other government spheres. This rings true for the NISNA and various other petitions brought before the committee. Hordes petisies oor rondloperdiere, handel op die sypaadjies en 'n gebrek aan munisipale regulasies is kwessies wat deur die afdwinging van behoorlike munisipale bywette aangespreek behoort te word. Hoenders in die hoofstraat is bloot nie so dringend soos 65% van COVID-19 befondsing wat deur gewetenlose maatskappye en individue gesteel en geplunder is nie. Die komitee sal dit dus voortaan sterk moet oorweeg om petisies vooraf te ondersoek en te prioritiseer om te verseker dat alle moontlike weë reeds uitgeput is om plaaslike probleme aan te spreek voordat die komitee genader word. Closer liaison with the office of the Speaker is therefore called for in this regard. On the 17th of June, corruption and mismanagement claims were brought against NISNA municipality by NISNA United, a community-based organization. The municipality allegedly forced prepaid water meters onto a predominantly Black community and not on affluent areas. There was also no advertisement of the tender for the purchase of 6,995 water meters, on which the municipality allegedly spent 113 million. NISNA United also called for the reinstatement of the suspended suspension of the CFO, and a forensic investigation into the municipality. The DA welcomes a forensic investigation into the municipality and urges the Provincial Department of Local Government to follow up on the implementation of the 2020 recommendations, given the failure of the 2018 recommendations. Those who were at fault needs to be held accountable, and proper consequence management needs to be instated where needed. We agree that there was no value for money in the purchasing of these water meters, for the municipality paid almost double the market price, and a forensic investigation into the procurement process is appropriate. Ons neem kennis dat die munisipaliteit die beweringe van 'n rasgedrewe implementering van die projek weer lê het, en die watermeters is inderdaad installeer in 9 van die 11 wyke. Die bewering dat die koste 113 miljoen beloop het, is ook ontken, en die munisipaliteit volstaan dat 62 miljoen uitgegee is om 7,000 meters aan te koop, waarvan 5,000 reeds aktiveer is. Op die bewering dat die tender nie adverteer was nie, het die munisipaliteit gesê dat die nasionale tesourieregulasie 32 gevolg was, waar advertering nie benodig word nie. The provincial government, in collaboration with provincial treasury, developed a comprehensive support package in accordance with Section 154 of the Constitution, including a financial recovery process for the municipality, and instituted a Section 106 investigation process, which the DA agrees with. the DA acknowledged the shortcoming regarding support from the National Department of Kokta. Leierskap en oorsig in die munisipaliteit moet dringend versterk word, aangesien 'n onlangse lening van 71 miljoen vanaf die Ontwikkelingsbank van Suid-Afrika afgekeur was op grond van politieke onstabiliteit wat 'n hoë risiko teweegbring in terme van terugbetaling. Politieke inmenging het net so 'n hoë prys soos wanbestuur en swak regering. Politieke onstabiliteit en 'n fragmenteerde benadering van die Raad is ook een van die hoofbevindinge van die provinsiale departement se 2020-analise van die munisipaliteit. Dit lei tot onvoldoende oorsig en monitering en uiters beperkte strategiese rigting van die Raad. Dwars oor alle regeringssfere moet ons meer met ons mense, ons kiesers, inwoners en gemeenskappe gesels en publieke deelname in besluitneming moet verhoog word, veral op plaaslike regeringsvlak, om sodoende kollektiewe plaaslike oplossings te vind vir plaaslike probleme. Die komitee wag egter nog steeds op die vorderingsverslag in sake die herstel van munisipale bestuur en finansiële stabiliteit, asook die 2018 en 2020 hoofvlak assesseringsverslag in sake die ware toestand binne Knysna munisipaliteit. Dankie.
Dankie, achtbare lid. The next speaker is the Honorable Keza.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, we have been consistently arguing that that if we do not pay special attention to the state of the local municipalities in this country, we'll soon have an unled revolution. People are tired of self-serving leaders of municipalities whose only interest is to line up their pockets while leaving the communities bare, marginalized, poor, and without resource within the municipalities themselves. It is disgraceful that Knysna United Movement had to come to this house because the leadership of Knysna municipality only wanted to demonize them instead of dealing with issues with Knysna United, which Knysna United raised. It is common cause for municipalities in the Western Cape whose orientation is still racist to install prepaid meters for communities that they think will not afford paying for water and electricity. These are obviously predominantly Black communities, but more disgusting, Chairperson, they use projects such as installation of these meters in order to further enrich businesses aligned to them in their interest. It is now common cause, and even municipalities accept that. Even the municipality accepts that the installation of the water meters in predominantly Black communities was a wasteful expenditure investment. The question is, why was this done? Who benefited from the installation of these meters? What is their relation with the leadership of the municipality? We fully support the forensic investigation into the financial dysfunction at Knysna municipality, and all those found responsible for financially collapsing that municipality must be held to account. We would like to further extend our gratitude to the Knysna United, who took this matter up with Parliament. We want to ask them not to stop there. They must also investigate the corrupt land deals the municipality has been making there, with which seek to give rich white people exclusive access to the beach in Knysna. We support this report. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Mumalu.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Again, as I earlier did, I deliver also this declaration report on behalf of Inkosi Yasemathulini, Honorable Chair. Well, Chair, in response to a petition received from the Knysna United, it is a community-based organization operating in the Knysna municipal area, which contained allegations of corruption and municipal management or mismanagement at the Knysna local municipality. The Portfolio Committee on COGTA invited both parties to make representations in compliance with the oversight role the Portfolio Committee has in respect of local government. It was alleged that overpriced and unaffordable prepaid water meters were forced upon the living people in the poor communities in that area, and further that the procurement processes followed by the municipality in the process was not only irregular, but additionally constituted fruitless and wasteful expenditure. It was further alleged that the financial situation at the municipality was at dire straits, and as a result thereof, the municipality service delivery was very poor, and the municipality could not afford to pay their staff for 2019 December. SMMEs in that particular area received little business from the municipality, and there was very heavy reliance upon outside third-party consultants. The submissions from the municipality in reply refuted many of the above allegations. After due consideration, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, the committee submitted recommendations which include support for the National Department of COGTA, is currently considering Section 154 intervention in terms of our Constitution. In conclusion, Chair, a way forward for the municipality has been established, and the municipality will be returning to Parliament to brief the committee on the progress made in restoring the governance and financial stability. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Thring.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. In the view of the ACDP, it is a truism that local government is at the coalface of service delivery. And when a municipality fails to meet its obligations, the snowball effects are huge, where at the end of it all, the poor, indigent, and most vulnerable amongst us suffer. This is most certainly the case in the Knysna municipality. Political fighting in Knysna has resulted in instability, persistent institutional and financial challenges, all of which have undoubtedly affected service delivery in the municipality. There were essentially 6 allegations submitted in the petition by the Knysna United Community Organization, the first of which speaks to corruption, irregular and wasteful expenditure arising from an alleged irregular issuing of a tender for prepaid water meters amounting to 113 million rand. Now, despite the rebuttal to the allegations of the Knysna United Community Organization by the newly appointed mayor, Mr. Elric Aswagen, the mayor, by his own admission, stated that there was no value for money in respect to the procurement of the prepaid meters. On this matter, therefore, the ACDP concurs with the committee's first observation that which was that the municipality paid more than double the normal market price for those prepaid meters, and hence calls for a forensic investigation into the tender of those prepaid water meters. This forensic investigation must be fast-tracked and the results made immediately available on completion. In supporting the recommendations of this committee, the ACDP wishes to concur with the comments of the former Auditor General of South Africa, Mr. Kimi Matkwetu, when he said that our municipalities are in a crisis because they have the wrong people at the till. The ACDP calls on the Auditor General, Tsakani Maluleka, to enforce a newfound power in the amended Audit Act, which emboldens the Auditor General to issue certificates of debt to personally hold financial and accounting officers responsible for funds misappropriated due to material irregularities which are uncovered. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Just a correction, Honorable Member, Mr. Kimi Matkwetu is still the Auditor General.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable,
the incoming Auditor General.
Yes.
Thank
yes,
you.
I think it's important to correct that. The
Thank
next
you, Chair.
speaker is the Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Sheikh Imam, are you there? If not, I'll proceed to the Honorable Direko.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, it remains the fact that access to basic services has increased since 1994. However, there's more still needs to be done. The remaining backlog with respect to access to quality basic services such as water, electricity, and shelter has been difficult to eradicate due to increasing population growth, institutional weaknesses, lack of budget, lack of skills, and lack of spatial planning challenge, and also special planning challenges. The local sphere of government is faced with challenges of aging and failing infrastructure, lack of investment, and lack of implementation of operations and maintenance, vandalism, and culture of non-payments of services. There is an urgent need in many municipalities to complete all infrastructure projects, especially reticulation and rectification in the areas of water and women settlement. The infrastructure in some instances is derailed by mismanagement of resources, and municipalities end up not getting value for the money that has been invested, such as this one of NISNA, because the services that were rendered is not value for money. In fact, the municipality has wasted money in that project. The municipality in question must strengthen communication lines to avoid unnecessary tension between the municipality and the community members. Both national and provincial sphere of government have a constitutional duty to build the capacity of the municipality to promote investment and job creation. The ANC appeals to national local municipality to double its effort in construction of a democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and united and prosperous society based on justice, equality, the rule of law, and absolute human rights of all. The ANC, as a champion of nation building, firmly believes municipality has a responsibility to ensure social integration and inclusion in communities and society at large, and the extent to which mutual solidarity finds expression amongst individuals and communities. As the ANC, we are serious about promoting good governance in the municipality, rooting out of corruption, consequence management, and accountability. So NISNA municipality is not exception to all the above mentioned issues. We therefore support the recommendations of the committee, because during the committee meeting, issues that were of concern was the fact that money was spent and it was not spent wisely because it was not value for money. In fact, the prices were inflated on that project. And secondly, there is also a need for forensic investigation on the matter. As the colleagues has indicated that somewhere, somehow, someone has benefited from the project because it was not done accordingly in terms of the FMMA. So therefore, we also call for Department of Culture to intervene in this municipality by instituting a necessary intervention in this municipality so that we can be able to root out all issues, all things that are not supposed to be done in the municipality, and promote the good governance as the ANC, as we always push for. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, that concludes the debate on this report. I will now hand over to the Honorable Mika Mashlaule, who will continue presiding over this session from the second order. The Honorable Mashlaule.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable members, we shall now proceed to the last order of the day, which is the consideration of the report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Technology on oversight visit to Gauteng. I now recognize the Honorable Nodada from the Democratic Alliance.
Sihlalo, malunga bekekileyo fellow South Africans molweni. In order for us to fully understand the depth of what we need to do as members of parliament about the issues that face South Africans and hold the governing party accountable on what they ought to do with taxpayers' money through these departments, we have to go to the ground and see it for ourselves. The committee's oversight visit to Gauteng came after a countrywide oversight I conducted at universities and TVET colleges, which further showed the Department of Higher Education in constant crisis, with little being done to deal with the issues that have been reoccurring for years, while a rosy picture is always painted in boardroom presentations to us in Parliament. And the Department of Science and Innovation, efficiently and effectively hard at work with a stringent and shrinking budget allocation, despite being strained by the minister's processes for them to produce more innovations. We visited DHEAD, meeting USAF, NSFAS, further went to the CSIR, the State Information Technology Agency, TUT, and VUT, to simply check the state of readiness of institutions to implement the 2020 academic year, progress with disbursements of NSFAS funding to eligible students, governance and management, CSIR's development facilities and technologies, particularly on research and innovation, CETA's role in the certification backlog, and undertake site visits to infrastructure projects in these universities. We were welcomed by a depressing presentation by NSFAS, whom have had over 14,000 NSFAS qualifying students left without funding. Over 20 TVET colleges whom are failing to pay allowances for food, books, accommodation, and transport to students, some as long as 8 months. And the reports of continued fraud and corruption, which has resulted in 7.6 billion of taxpayers' money being irregularly spent by NSFAS. The department was clearly not ready for the academic year, despite Minister Nzimande's continuous denial on the 3rd of March, while 6 universities were shut down and over 13 TVET colleges campuses were in protest, many due to NSFAS funding the missing middle and infrastructure-related issues. And many of these campuses had not commenced with any academic activity on start of the lockdown. Furthermore, the TVET curriculum had not been reviewed. As a result, NATED is outdated and last reviewed in 1994. Imagine. Many courses not relevant for industry and many oversaturated courses. However, the visit to the CSIR was a breath of fresh air and showed how public funds are used to produce excellence, which was an encouragement for us all to advocate for better budget allocation for research and innovation, which can help solve some of our country's problems. The CSIR has established a biofarming platform which takes South African research with good potential for commercialization and moves it towards commercial application. The platform works on a number of projects in human health, veterinary health, and industrial biotechnology that are at various stages of development. The 85,000 certification backlog that has left young South Africans sitting at home and joining the unemployment statistics had propelled us to visit the State Information Technology Agency, which is mainly a printing facility which is responsible for matric certificates, TVET certificates and diplomas, IDs, and other related services. DHEAD is supposed to issue certificates to eligible candidates within 3 months after the examination. However, they are failing to do this due to a misaligned ICT system facilitated by DHEAD, CETA, and Umalusi. Yet the minister is always chanting 4IR. Even the building at DHEAD didn't even have Wi-Fi. But in any case, the last stop was TUT and VUT, which have been mirrored with poor governance and management, corruption, poor infrastructure, in particular student accommodation, and funding for students, which has resulted in VUT being put under administration and TUT subpoenaed to account for maladministration. The sad reality is that consequence management for these broken entities is a foreign concept. Instead, the ANC rewards these people through other roles in public services and boards in the sector. The DA has proposed that the following should be done. 1, a full inquiry into NSFAS corruption maladministration and collapse in its basic functions as brought by Nahal. Number 2, the ministerial task team to fast-track the review of the entire business model, particularly decentralizing its functions and expedite the appointment of a CEO and CFO to ensure that poor students don't have to wait up to 8 months for their allowances. Further explore the best allowances distribution mechanism, particularly for TVET students, and standardize their allowances with universities to avoid the misleading parliament that was done by Dr. Carlson, again, regarding the BBS tender. Lastly, CSIR must be assigned to help CETA, DHEAD, and Umalusi to develop an ICT system that will ensure consolidated production of certificates. Content management should be against the university officials who are implicated in maladministration. The report
Honorable
member,
also engaged in your time has expired.
In human settlements to ensure that we
Honorable
expedite
member,
the issue of student accommodation. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, our next speaker will be Honorable Tembekwai from the EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. At the beginning of each year, our institutions of higher education are faced with the same problem. Each year, there is a growing number of students who have passed high school who struggle to get access to institutions of higher learning. Each year, there is a large number of students who cannot register or are kicked out of the system because they simply do not have money to pay for fees, despite the many brave struggles waged by students to ensure that higher education is free and accessible. Each year, we know of struggles of students who have been accepted to these institutions, but who do not have accommodation or food or utensils required to make their studies more successful, such as computers and data. When this committee went on an oversight visit to Gauteng at the beginning of this year, you all knew the struggles of these students. You all knew that the department was going to stand up and sign praise for themselves, while in actual fact, they have done very little to assist the students at institutions of higher learning. You all knew too that NSFAS would reduce the suffering of majority Black students to mere numbers, while they know that they reject a large number of deserving students every year. Just recently, they indicated that they were going to defund about 5,000 students on the basis of some flimsy affordability excuse. The reality is that both universities and TVETs in Gauteng, as in the rest of the country, were not ready for admissions at the beginning of this year, as they are not ready for admissions at the beginning of next year. We reject this report because this committee does not appreciate the agency of holding this department, NSFAS, and universities to account for the pain they put Black students through. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Our next speaker will be the Honorable van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Chairperson, let me say at the outset that I do not serve on this portfolio committee, but that I will deliver this input on behalf of our Secretary General, the Honourable S.L. Ngobo. Chairperson, the challenges within our higher education sector are well known, many of which were highlighted during Parliament's oversight visit to Gauteng. It is the IFP's view that it remains a sad state of affairs that many young people who are eligible to access higher education are unable to do so, that NSFAS corruption and maladministration continues to fail many students, robbing them of their future, and that there remains a lack of consequence management at universities where mismanagement is rife. This report also highlighted the number of delays in university building projects as a result of poor service delivery by dodgy contractors. Unless we consistently monitor this issue, we will simply be provided with more excuses. The Portfolio Committee must therefore investigate these tender failures, corruption, and enforce accountability. A delay in infrastructure rollout, Chairperson, ultimately means a delay in access to higher education for our vulnerable young people, a situation we cannot tolerate. Chair, in these unprecedented times, we need to ensure that we equip our future workforce with the skills and tools they require to compete in the global market. The budgetary impacts of COVID-19 cannot be an excuse in failing to do so. Universities are microcosms of our country, and in our case, the digital divide remains very stark. For many, limited access to devices and data poses a serious challenge to their future ambitions. For some students, difficult decisions have to be made whether to forgo basic needs in favor of data bundles. While many universities were quick to respond to some of these challenges by providing free data, these are only short-term fixes. The contentious issue of devices and data require a national intervention and an urgent long-term solution. Finally, Chairperson, in August of this year, Police Minister Becky Cele confirmed that education institutions in our country were becoming hotspots for sexual violence. In addition, Minister Blade Nzimande announced a special task team that will report to him within 12 months on the extent and scope of sexual offences at universities and will advise him on how to address this pandemic. However, it goes without saying that we need urgent interventions to address our gender-based violence crisis. It remains unforgivable, therefore, that thousands of social workers who have been trained by the state are sitting at home. It remains the IFP's view that these social workers should be employed and deployed to every university to provide survivor support without further delay. These social workers can provide immediate trauma support, counseling, and advice. We need tangible and urgent interventions on gender-based violence at institutions of higher learning now, and not only when the
member, your time has expired.
We support this report. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. The next speaker will be Honorable Boshoff from FF+.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I should start by saying that the oversight visit was a social success and it was very enjoyable to get known my colleagues in the Portfolio Committee on a more personal level. The Honorable Ketsi, who has since departed from Parliament, and also some of the other members who introduced me to contemporary African popular music. But that was not the purpose of the visit. We had to see for ourselves what the problems are at the Tshwane University of Technology, and we saw the whole the infrastructure projects which are still not completed. And we also witnessed false allegations made against certain personalities within the Tshwane University of Technology, which were proven wrong. We also went to the Vaal University of Technology, where just one thing is apparently world-class, and that's the sports facilities. Unfortunately, we were not given the opportunity to see that because of time constraints. We also went to the Information Technology Agency to see what things are like there, and that was quite impressive. Although the work don't get done, maybe because of wrong appointments. The high point, although it was not on the last day, was our visit to the CSIR with all the different projects they are busy with. And it is exactly that I want to remain with for a moment. Ons was daar in Januarie 2020 en die hoogtepunt van ons hele besoek, ook die hoogtepunt van die besoek aan die WNNR, was die besoek aan die Aeroswift laserprojek waar 3D drukwerk met titanium gedoen word, baie nuttige en kommersialiseerbare werk vir die lugvaartbedryf. Ons was almal baie beïndruk en ons groepfoto is ook daar geneem omdat dit 'n mens lekker trots laat voel het om deel te wees, al is dit op 'n afstand van so 'n groot projek. Min het ons toegeweet dat die rede hoekom die toerusting nie aan ons gedemonstreer is nie, is omdat dit nie gewerk het nie. En dat daardie projek sedertdien in Maart 2020, met ander woorde skaars 2 maande later, gelikwideer is, aangesien daar geweldige beweringe van korrupsie en van wanaanwending van fondse is. 'n Fluitjieblaser wat aanhoudend probeer het om regstellings te maak en uiteindelik toe die onderneming gelikwideer is, sy werk verloor het intussen al daardie inligting aan ons bekend gemaak. Wat erger is daar is reeds in 2018 'n forensiese ondersoek gedoen deur Fives Genote en daardie ondersoek is geïgnoreer. We would like to ask the ANC, just give us something to believe in. But let's not overstrain our expectations. Just give us something to believe. Ongelukkig kon ons nie glo wat ons gesien het nie en verwerp ons die verslag.
Honorable member, your time has expired. Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Honorable Thring from ACDP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. The ACDP notes that this comprehensive report outlines the broader picture of the higher education sector. And after one of the hardest lockdowns in the world in South Africa, we are certainly in a vastly different educational space. With the future of our young minds hanging in the balance, and I make this statement as this report actually speaks to a pre-lockdown era. Of great concern to the ACDP are the number of budget cuts the Higher Education, Science and Technology Department had to endure. Firstly, in order to address the COVID-19 pandemic that we had, and then also to strengthen our health system. Now, after the October medium-term budget policy statement, 1.13 billion was transferred from the department to assist with the bailout of SAA. As a result of failed government SOEs, failed policies, corrupt and inept individuals at the helm of key SOEs, our students now have to bear the brunt of this financial mismanagement. An additional concern of the ACDP is the student debt of some 9 billion rand. It is crucial that we inculcate moral, ethical, and principled values in our students. While some may have indeed fallen on hard times, others completely ignore the commitment that they made to settle outstanding debt. The ACDP has called on the department to recover debt from those students now gainfully employed who have benefited from free or subsidized higher education paid for by public funds, rather than inculcating a culture of entitlement and destroying what you have in order to obtain what you don't have. Our students must develop a culture of responsibility, where when finding themselves gainfully employed, they should pay it back in order to assist those students who are still struggling financially. The ACDP also welcomes the support given to students coming from poor and working class families who wish to attend universities and TVET colleges, and calls for immediate action to be taken where allegations of corruption and maladministration at NSFAS are found to be true. We indeed agree that our TVET colleges must be modernized and improved, as a failure to do so will impact on the quality of teaching and the throughput rates at the TVET sector. The ACDP further acknowledges the potential that the CSIR has in the area of research and development, and the need for synergies and collaboration of all government departments in order to benefit from the uptake of the innovations and technologies of the CSIR. We assert as the ACDP that we do not need a new normal in higher education, science and technology, but a better normal. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Thring. The next speaker will be Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Sheikh Imam. We will then proceed to Honorable Litsie from the ANC.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think from the onset, I must correct Honorable Member Boshoff that the music that he listened to, and I want to confess that it was us who introduced him, but it was not a contemporary, it was Amapiano. But also to correct Honorable Thring, I don't think he spoke about anything of the report. It was just general. But we understand he could not be with us. The oversight visit by the Parliamentary Committee is an integral function of accountability. The visit to Gauteng provided the lived experience to the PC in understanding the challenges that face the PSET sector as a whole, with the intention of resolving the day-to-day issues affecting students, staff, and various institutions. The ANC believes in a grounded approach in resolving the challenges affecting students and the entire sector. The registration process in higher education is one of the key periods in ensuring that all qualifying students get access to higher education. This period can also mean a lack of access for many young people who want to better their livelihoods and continue to contribute to the development of the economy. The PC thus found it extremely pivotal to monitor and understand the causes to the inability of the sector as a whole in having a successful start to the academic year. We must fight against the normalization of the unrest on campuses at the beginning of each year by proactively planning as a sector and as a society at large. In order to transform our society, the policy of the ANC places education at the center of developing and empowering all South Africans, particularly the poor, youth, women, and people living with disabilities. Skilling our people is a driver to enable them to be their own liberators. The visit to both TUT and VUT provided the PC with an opportunity to assess the lived reality of students, noting that the quality of higher education is also determined by the provision of adequate infrastructure support in the form of adequate student accommodation and other university facilities. The numerous challenges and delays at TUT and VUT relating to infrastructure development grants and projects remains of great concern as they are as they undermine the effort to expand the access to higher education. We thus welcome the department's plans to support institutions of higher learning with the skills and knowledge of successfully executing and managing these projects. The sixth administration has placed the creation of an ethical and capable developmental state as a key priority. Governance and management play a critical role in ensuring our institutions deliver on their mandates and make an impact in transformational and development of our society. The PEC probed issues of governance and provided recommendations to improve in VUT and TUT. You'll remember that VUT is under administration currently, and we did, probe issues of governance there. Noting the common disjuncture between NSFAS headquarters and NSFAS offices on campus. The visit also enabled Portfolio Committee to elevate issues of student allowances and NSFAS-related issues that can lead to students dropping out due to lack of funding or maladministration of the process. Having gone to VUT and facilitated the oversight at the NSFAS offices there on campus, the ongoing challenges relating to NSFAS at VUT remains of great concern to us. The inability to ensure that one student receives their funding is an injustice, let alone hundreds of students as we're seeing currently. The NC believes in creating an equal education system, and this should be reflected through the provision of equal financial support for students at TVET colleges. The support to universities and TVET college students should be equal in addressing the same financial needs to cover their accommodation, food, and transport allowances. I think the point they were trying to make is that students, whether they are registered at TVET or at universities, they still buy food at the same shop, right, or Pick and Pay, and they still take the same transport, same taxi. Does not ask if you are a university or a TVET student. The modernization of TVETs and the review of the curriculum, as raised in the oversight visit, should be prioritized to create equal opportunities for all students in a PSET sector. The crisis around the backlog on certification of TVET program has remained of great concern to the Portfolio Committee. It is thus the PC found it critical that we go and physically witness the process of certification. The visit to CETA enabled us to get progress in the addressing of the certification backlog of NCV and NATED certificates, which has a negative impact on students who want to further their studies and those who seek work opportunities. Despite the cutting-edge technology facility, the misalignment of IT system by the TVETs and the legacy systems created a difficulty to rapidly address the backlog. The CETA is seized with the task of addressing this challenge. Others may want to portray, like Honorable Boshoff now, a narrative that science continues to be spaces of the elite and aloof from servicing the masses of our country. However, this oversight period allowed the nullification of that narrative. Another major highlight of the oversight visit was the visit to CSIR and CIT. CSIR is one of the most excelling entities that provide cutting-edge research and development that places our country and development on a high pedestal. What Honorable Bojov was talking about, really, it's news. I mean, we just adopted the annual report now with clean audits there. So the issues of what is speaking about now, we don't know. The innovations by the CSIR, like the Ambiflow low-cost Doppler ultrasound, which has shown a potential to reduce by up to 40% the perinatal mortality in developing countries should be commended. CSIR as a vaccine production expression system which can develop rabies vaccine. The CIR has also developed a diabetes detecting chip to monitor blood sugar level. I think Honorable Tring, this one will help you in future. Greater sectoral synergy and understanding of the ground is enhanced through oversight visit, as it enables the portfolio committee to interact with all stakeholders in institutions from students, SRC, unions, management entities, and other sector stakeholders. The NC therefore supports this commendation. We also want to wish all matrics well in their matric exams, but also take this opportunity to wish Honorable new leader of the DA well in his exams, as he will be embarking on a process of writing.
Honorable member, your time has expired.
As he will be embarking on his grade 7
Thank you very much, Honorable Letsia. Honorable members, that concludes the debate and the business of this virtual mini-plenary session. The mini-plenary will now rise. Thank you very much.
Long live the chairperson! Long live
the chair!
Long live the chair!